If you know your partner, then you should never feel like you hurting their feelings if it's something that's true.
Because I remember a couple of days ago you asked me, or you brought up the conversation of like, why are women okay with their man being
out of shape. Yeah.
Or just bigger?
They settling for
And
it.
for women, I mean, women always go with the obvious answer. Like, we love them for their personality, and we obviously like them for their soul. But I think that is a bigger conversation. It's like, why are we okay with settling and not being the best version of ourselves? And that's something that I feel like we have always held each other accountable, where, like, I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, like, as women, we probably sometimes don't want to hear, hey, you look a little bit bigger in this, or hey, you don't look your best, or hey, you haven't been consistent with the things that you said you were gonna do. And that's something that I feel like you kind of held me accountable, where I told you, hey, I have this goal, and you held me accountable. Hey, how much closer are you to this goal? Not saying it that you were doing it like in a rude way, but I think that most couples don't want to have those conversations. Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of being in alignment with your partner for episode 32. So you guys know that at the beginning of every podcast, we always like to shout out a supporter. So this week we wanted to go ahead and shout out, drum roll please. Where's my drum roll? This week we wanted to go ahead and shout out sales girly Angela. And she said, love this format. So we post a lot of reels on our Instagram. So if you guys do not follow us on our Instagram, make sure you guys do follow us. The links will be down below. Don't forget, you guys can like this podcast. You guys can listen to us on Anchor, on Spotify. And you guys can leave your comments down below on YouTube. So that way you guys can let us know what topics or what conversations you guys would like to hear back from us next. But getting into today's episode, tell us, how was your week, babe?
Week was cool. Busy. Half the week I wasn't here. Half the week I was here.
Oh yeah, because you were in Vegas last week.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that kind of leads into today's podcast. So last week we opened up the podcast with a really important conversation that I think that, we've had this conversation a couple times on the podcast, but we wanted to revisit it last week just because, this comes up every day, and it comes up in just so many spaces and different conversations. But one of the things that we were talking about is just being in alignment with your partner. And last week we really got into the specifics of being in alignment with your partner, in your relationship in terms of values and beliefs. But something we didn't really touch on was not only, the beliefs, but also like the financial aspect, like what you guys want out of life, family. And we wanted to get into that. So starting the conversation, I know finances is like a really just a big and important topic for a lot of people, especially when they're in a relationship. But I guess like I would love to hear from you and start the conversation out with, because something that we talked about last episode is a lot of things are learned through your environment. Are you a service-based entrepreneur that provides some kind of service, but you don't know how to create content in order to convert someone from following you into a paying client? I'm going to tell you exactly what to post in order to start generating more leads, attract high-paying clients, and get more DMs than you can possibly answer. I will help you how to find your niche, how to find your target audience, and craft offers that will attract top buyers every time you go to make a post. Text me content to 513-516-7332 to learn more on how you can get mentored by me for only $99 a month. So I don't think we even touched on that last week is, growing up, did you ever have a model of a relationship that you could look up to, or was it kind of like you having to figure out everything as you went?
Kind of here and there. So, and mostly was from my 6th grade teacher. She was married with her husband, and this was before they had kids too, so I always got to see them interact. And then my cousin, Chris, his parents, Big Chris and Chantel, was my aunt and uncle per se. So I would say, yeah, I had good examples of couples growing up.
Really? Mm-hmm. I feel like growing up, I didn't really have good examples at all. I mean, my parents were always a unit, but something that I have spoken about is obviously for us, like, and that's what I'm saying, like, did they ever have conversations about you? Did they ever have conversations with you about like money and like how you should be on the same page with your partner? Or
now that's a different conversation. I guess more so as an observant, and nothing was actually being taught to me necessarily.
Yeah, because I would say the same thing. Like
I was an
maybe,
observer.
yeah, maybe things were learned through observing or through listening. But as far as I can remember conversations about money, the only thing that my parents would ever tell me is like save for a rainy day, or you always want to be making sure that you're smart with your money, not overspending. But those are really like the only conversations that I can remember that they had. I mean, they talked to us a little bit about credit cards, like maybe once or twice when you were growing up. But again, like these weren't really conversations that we were having. So for me, like you said, for me, a lot of the learning that I had to do was observing and, just learning from different couples, and obviously different from like people around you, of like, what is it that you like? What is it that you don't like? What is it that you want to carry into your relationship? And I know for us, we had to learn a lot from it. But as far as like the financial aspect, like I really learned, I guess, like a lot of it from observing from my parents, of how like, they were always a unit and they were always a partnership when it comes to finances. Obviously my mom tried to help out a little bit as, we got older, and she wanted to work, and, she wanted to make income. But I remember for a long time, my mom didn't even work. I think it was just my dad being the breadwinner in the family. So that even opens up another conversation for couples, or for you to think about, could you do that for a season of time if you had to do that? Because I remember when my mom and my dad met, they were both working, but things changed, and she had to stop working for a little bit.
What?
Need nothing? Okay.
I've always just been a figure it out type of person, so that's all I can really say about that.
Yeah. Okay.
And we always discuss our financial goals, which is something that I didn't learn through anybody else. That's just something that we picked up. It's discussed because we discuss everything else. So why not discuss our financial goals, like how much money we want to make this month, how much money that we want to make in a year, how many clients that we want to pick up. Like we didn't, specifically for me, nobody in my family was entrepreneurs. So not only are we a couple, but we're entrepreneur couples. And I don't know a lot of entrepreneur couples that I can like, even being around at the office, I didn't really pick up too much from them about. The main thing was just saving money that I got from them. But even then, they didn't really tell us like, all right, as a couple, what you should do. Andy and Jackie.
Oh, like the last job we had.
Yeah.
And I would say back to that, I think even having a conversation about it is super important, because, growing up, my dad was an entrepreneur, but again, that wasn't something where we were a part of the conversation, or they were having that conversation around us. For us, it was always like, don't worry about it, like we got it, and it was never a conversation. So I'm actually kind of glad that you mentioned that, because correct, something that I think we've always been pretty good at is being transparent and having a conversation even when it's difficult. And I think for like a lot of couples, whether you're struggling or you don't know where to start, maybe, start the conversation by just talking about it, or just by bringing it up. Or, I think at the beginning when you start dating, it's really uncomfortable, because that's when you start getting to know each other, and like, where are your finances? How much do you owe in debt? And where's your credit score? And obviously it's uncomfortable because, sometimes it doesn't always start the best. Like I think when I met you, I think I barely had credit. I didn't really know anything about it. I mean, I was building it.
But the most important thing about that is that we had goals, and we talked about what we had and what we didn't have. That was the most important thing. And we've always been transparent with each other. And that's not something that I've seen from other couples. And it's not because I'm not in everybody else's business. It's just that I didn't see couples talking about financial goals or things that they want to achieve. And I've always been that type of person. Every relationship that I've been in, I've always wanted to attain more. And unfortunately, the partners that I was with never was on that type of mindset where they wanted more. Like this, I can get more out of life. Like this is just another level for me. Like these are goals that I'm trying to obtain, and I never had that investment into ourselves. I never had that in the partner until I met you. Because you've always invested in yourself. You've always self-developed. And again, that's not what I've seen from other couples. Like, I don't know any other couple like us.
Yeah, also side note, I don't know if you guys can see my pants on camera. I got these pants on Shein, and they weren't supposed to have a hole, and they have a hole in the knees. I don't know. I mean, I understand why they did it. That's so that way when
It's not necessarily a hole, it's a designed cut.
yeah, it's when you bend down, like it's not supposed to be tight. But I know it looks a little awkward sitting down, but oh well. But on that note, I wanted to bring it back to.
Damn, look how bright that light is coming through.
I wanted to bring it back to correct. I think that, something that we have always been good at is even holding each other to higher standards, because obviously that's the reason why we're having these uncomfortable conversations and why we're even. And something that we actually were just talking about yesterday is how it brings me back to the point of a lot of people want to be comfortable, and it's not a bad thing. I just think that, it can be a bad thing, but it's how our society is almost being raised nowadays. Our society is being told that, you should, which again, I went to school for social work, so I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I just think that, there's a line between how much is being too soft with people and how much is being too hard on them. And going back to like, how does it relate to mental health? And that's the reason why I bring this up, is because I think that, there's obviously a conversation around how do you hold people to a high standard while not being, I guess you would say, like a bully, but at the same time, you want better for yourself. And I think there's a thin line, but we always have wanted better for ourselves. And that's why we push each other so much. And like I said, some people don't want that. Some people aren't okay with that. And maybe that's something that you have to talk about with your partner. Are you willing to go through uncomfortable times? Are you going to be okay if we have to go through uncomfortable times? And that's something that we've been completely okay with,
Figure this fuck out.
Yeah.
Figure it the fuck out.
Yeah.
That's always been us. And I don't see a lot of people, especially in Cincinnati, right before we was leaving, there was not a lot of people around us that were willing to figure it the fuck out and actually want to take and elevate their relationship. That's why I said I feel like we were always example couples for people around us, because nobody ever had that relationship with their partner to the point that they wanted to achieve more.
Yeah, and I know this is getting a little bit off topic, but I know for women, and obviously, they can go both ways. They can go for women and men, but I think sometimes there's a whole nother conversation, and maybe we can do a part 3, but I think sometimes in a relationship, you even asked me this question a couple of days ago, but in a relationship, it can be hard to hold your partner accountable.
Why?
Or to higher standards when you don't want to hurt their feelings. And I remember,
if that's your partner, then you wouldn't. If you know your partner, then you should never feel like you hurting their feelings if it's something that's true.
Because I remember a couple of days ago, you asked me, or you brought up the conversation of like, why are women okay with their man being
out of shape? Yeah.
Or just bigger.
They settling for
and
it.
For women, women always go with the obvious answer. Like, we love them for their personality, and we obviously like them for their soul. But I think that is a bigger conversation. It's like, why are we okay with settling and not being the best version of ourselves? And that's something that I feel like we have always held each other accountable, where, like, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Like, as women, we probably sometimes don't want to hear, hey, you look a little bit bigger in this, or hey, you don't look your best, or hey, you haven't been consistent with the things that you said you were going to do. And that's something that I feel like you kind of held me accountable, where I told you, hey, I have this goal, and you held me accountable. Hey, how much closer are you to this goal? Not saying it that you were doing it like in a rude way, but I think that most couples don't want to have those conversations. I even pushed you to go to the gym, because I was like, hey, now you're the one that's slipping. Like, I'm going to the gym consistently. You're not putting in the effort. And I held you accountable, and then you just started incorporating it into your routine. But I say that to say that, because we can go so many directions, but when it comes to appearance, I think that that's like the most uncomfortable for a lot of people, or a lot of couples, is why are we okay with settling or just not holding each other to higher standards? Because
people don't like to be called out.
Even vice versa. Like, I know so many, again, this is not to say you have to do things this way, but I know a portion of men that we speak to, or like men that we knew from Cincinnati, where they were in a relationship and like they obviously wouldn't be happy with their partner, or something that their partner was doing, or something that was making their partner unhappy, and that they knew they could help their partner with, but they were scared to speak up. And I see this a lot within, like I said, not just women, but even men, where it's like, oh, like, I feel so unhealthy. I don't like the clothes I'm wearing. But then you're afraid to speak up and tell them maybe you need to change your diet. Maybe you just need to go to the gym. Why is that so hard?
For like couples
For
in
people
general?
in general.
I don't know. And I think the more and more like we get better as a couple, the more and more it's kind of hard for me to talk to or relate to other people that are in relationships, because it's like.
But remember, you have to be the gap. That's what I've learned, is that you have to learn
No,
how to.
I don't. I don't have to be the
You have to
gap.
learn how to bridge that gap.
I don't. No, I don't.
Because, I mean, you don't have to, but I know for me as a marketer, if I'm always constantly better than people, I'm not learning from people. Matt, I need your help growing my social media audience.
All right, guys, if you need help growing your social media audience, make sure you text 602-390-7002. Once again, it's 602-390-7002.
I'm not helping people improve themselves.
That's your fault because you're not being around the right people. That has nothing to do with you being a gap bridger. If you don't like to be the toughest or the smartest person in the room, then you need to surround yourself with more smarter people.
That's true.
Or richer
That's
people.
True.
That's
all
up to you.
perspective.
And that's where I get the messages and the calls about, oh, we need to go do like a double date or stuff like that. And I'm just like, that would be boring to me because I just typically don't find any couples that I know personally that we've met that I would want to hang out with. Because it's like, why am I hanging out with you? Like, we're not even in the same realm. Like, we don't even have the same thoughts. Like,
Beliefs. I think beliefs is the most important, and yeah, that can be a whole other conversation. But I mean, that's the most important thing that we're just getting at through these like last 2 episodes is communication, and not that you have to have the same beliefs as like another person, like 100% the same, but you have to have like the same core mission. And I think when you don't have the same core mission, it's really hard to relate to people. So, you have to think about that in your relationship, is if you do start growing separately and you outgrow each other like in a year, do you still have some kind of like core mission or just mission that you both align with that could keep you guys growing?
Yeah, and more importantly, the reason why you outgrowing that person is because y'all don't share the same values and same beliefs. And because if y'all not having, like we have our weekly meetings, if you're not having your weekly meetings or monthly meetings or quarterly meetings or whatever you do with your partner, and y'all not communicating on y'all values and what y'all want to do in life, then you're going to eventually grow apart because y'all not going in the same direction.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up, like, there's seasons for everything, because I know last episode we talked about how there's seasons for everything, and obviously we are not perfect, and I think that we got here by taking small steps every single day, and that's another reason why we named the podcast 1% Better Every Day, is because a lot of people think that change happens overnight or like all these drastic steps have to happen from one day to the next, and it doesn't work like that. It doesn't happen like that. For us, we can only talk about our personal experience, but there's seasons for everything. So at the beginning when we first started dating, like, I don't think I had a business, you did, but there was a season where you were out there hustling. I understood. I was in college, and we spent a little less time together, but we understood what the mission was at the time. And then we went through a different season where, now it's grinding in a different way because we're moving across the country. And then there was a different season where it's like, hey, now that we work this hard, we can take a little time off to spend time with ourselves. But again, there's different seasons for different things. And I think that the most important thing, like we have reemphasized within the last 2 episodes, is just learning how to communicate, because so many people don't communicate. And I think that I've learned this even more now, is that as a woman, sometimes I tend to assume, or sometimes I just assume in general, like, oh, that person's feeling this way, or that person is thinking this, but you never want to assume. Like, always ask questions, and ask more questions than you need to. And that goes for any relationship or any friendship.
But that's why it's important to have those meetings too, so you understand and you're on the same page and you're actually communicating about what's going on.
Yeah.
Because that's the biggest thing that I see in couples that are asking us questions and stuff like that. Like, they don't even know what's going on with each other. They have no idea. Like, why y'all not talking?
And again, I think nowadays, just because people just get so busy and they forget to check in with each other, it is an excuse, but we had to learn that. You know, because one of my biggest excuses for anything, you know this, was I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. And then slowly by changing things every single day, we got 1% better every single day. And I got better 1% better every single day, because now every single day, you know, what's the first thing I ask you? What are you doing today? What are your plans for today? Like, what's on your list? Or every week I'm asking you, hey, what are your goals for the week? And again, it's helped that we have those personal meetings. But, you know, even for the first 4 years of a relationship, we didn't really have those meetings. I mean, we talk a lot just because we are communicators.
We was working in the house. It was COVID, so we
still communicate.
We always had that vision that that's something that we need to do. Now, we just make it more apparent and more of a priority.
Now we're just more intentional.
Yeah, way more intentional. Yeah. And that's I'm glad that you say that, because you need to have intentional conversations with your partner.
Intentional time with like your phone not on, your phone off, even date nights. You know, where you're not always on your phone, you're not watching TV, you're not in the house, because even that can become a routine. But at the end of every episode, we always like to go into a hot topic. So for this week, we wanted to go ahead and read this hot topic that someone had. Anyone struggle with their partner being on the same page? Just a general question: if people have partners who are maybe less granola than them, and how do you cope? I admittedly get pretty anxious at times and go down rabbit holes, but sometimes I feel like my husband just views me as super extreme. He's such a wonderful and supportive partner, but I guess I just wish I could get him to care more about things on his own. I'm considering trying to find some basic, very middle of the road books on living a cleaner life and dangers of some of the toxic crap in our everyday life. So if anyone has any recommendations, please suggest them to me. Thanks for everyone suggesting and sharing their approaches on this. Wanted to add that I have found a documentary called Stink that we watched together, and it was a great way for my husband to learn more and us be able to talk about these things. It's a pretty basic documentary on how toxic chemicals are thrown into so much. I
didn't get the question.
So how do you get your partner on the same page when it comes to living cleaner, like chemical products, like chemical things, or just health-wise?
What was the issue? Why did you want them to live cleaner? What's the root cause of the problem? I don't feel like the root cause of the problem was discussed. You wanted to live cleaner, but why? And that's an important thing too. Like when we talking about relationships and the stuff that we do and being intentional, is the why behind it. Like, well, if you want your partner to lose weight, why? If you want your partner to be with you, why? Like, people love to include their partner and stuff, but why do you want your partner included? All this stuff. Like, is it going to be important? Is it going to be a reason why? Like, you gotta figure out your why at the end of the day. Because what happens is you can be caring about stuff and your partner could like not give two fucks about it, and there was no intention or no explanation as to why you were caring so much about this. Like, why was it important for you to be noticed, or why was it important for this to be such an important topic that y'all should be discussing?
Yeah, that's so important. And I definitely think that that's the most important thing. But following that, the second piece of advice I would say is when your partner doesn't necessarily care about something right away from the beginning, you have to lead by example. And that was something that I had to learn the hard way, where, you know, I would always want people to join me in this class, or join me at, you know, for this gym workout, or join me to do this activity. And I had to learn that sometimes people are not always going to want to join you, and that's okay, because people have different interests and different values, but sometimes you just have to show them by doing it yourself first. So maybe go out and buy those products, like replace your cabinets with all those things that you want, and once he sees that you're doing it, he's just going to eventually follow, because you're leading by example.
If the right partner will eventually follow.
Correct.
Some people will try to go the opposite
like this
direction.
morning when I tried to wake you up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you didn't want to.
You tried to wake me up?
Oh, okay. Well, you guys, that is where we're going to end the episode. Don't forget that if you guys want additional coaching and mentorship support, you guys can join our SKOOL community for $99 a month. It is a content mentorship program where you guys get to learn how to create content that attracts clients, how to use it as a freelancer or solopreneur to grow your business, and how to get your marketing and sales to talk to each other. That is it for today's podcast. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, listen to us on Anchor, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, you guys.